can see me now. Am I coming through at this point? Am I coming through at this point? All right, so hey, welcome to the show. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. It is butt cold out here. I am going to have to chip myself off the bench after I'm done with this, and I had some technical difficulties. One of my computers is dead, so I'm just going to have to wing it with regards to questions that I will ask you. So first, let me show you what we're doing here. So over on this side, I have a handy-dandy infrared camera that is showing the night sky, and I am currently looking just about due south. So if you want to type in stuff into the chat window, obviously, it's down there. And a little bit more diagonally down there in the corner, I'm going to type in some questions here. So for example, I could type in here, let me resize this window real quick, and then everything will be a little bit better. So all right, so the time lag is probably about 30 seconds between you and I, so I'm going to be typing questions and letting you contemplate those questions because, it's going to take some time for me to answer those. Hold on one second. I've got one more tool that I need to pop up here. Let's see, applications. It's a drawing tool. What is it called? Screen brush. There we go. Right. Okay. Now we're ready to go. All right, so think about that question I just asked you. And I am currently looking at a famous constellation. It is called the Teapot Asterism. And so let me draw some stuff here. Draw this over here. And let's see. We want that. We want the timer off. And this is what the asterism looks like. All right. Does everybody see that? See why that looks like a teapot? I'll let it fade off a little bit. And so we've got some answers here. Okay, the question, Jonathan, is what is the difference between a constellation and an asterism? And I've got one response. I think an asterism is smaller than a constellation, consisting of fewer stars. Well, that's not quite it, but that's close. So what we are looking at here with regards to this constellation and asterism is the constellation Sagittarius. Look at that. So it looks like a teapot in the sky. So the difference between a constellation and an asterism is a constellation is technically a region in the sky which contains some stars, and an asterism is the little stick figure drawing that you can draw, right? So the one of the asterisms for Sagittarius is this teapot shape. So that teapot would be the asterism, whereas some region like this, now this is not the actual constellation itself, but some region like this would be a constellation, okay? It's a region with stars in it. Okay? So there you go. Difference between a constellation and an asterism. So let me hide the screen brush. And it's time for another question here. So, what's the difference between a constellation, an ordinary constellation, and a zodiacal constellation? Because I was showing you Sagittarius, right? So Sagittarius is part of the zodiac, and the question is, what makes a zodiacal constellation a little bit different than an ordinary constellation? So let's ponder that for a second. So let me move my camera up a little bit so we can see this a little bit more plainly as to what's going on. Oops, my camera is frozen at this point. All right, there we go. There we go. Now we're looking at the night sky again. All right, so that gave us lots of time, basically, to people to answer the questions. So, to be a zodiacal constellation needs to be in the path of the sun. That is exactly right. So, obviously, we're not looking at the sun right now, but the sun will pass through the zodiacal constellation. And to be specific, the reason why a particular zodiacal constellation is related to a particular month, it's because during that month, for example, Sagittarius, I know, occurs, it's supposed to be early December. In early December, the sun will literally be in that portion of the sky where Sagittarius is, and that's the whole point for it. All right, so now I can move my camera and we can see some stuff. All right, so one of the things I want to point out, so take a look at this particular thing here. What are we looking at here, folks? What are we looking at here, folks? What is this? Any guesses as to what this is? See how it's kind of like a glowing thing in the sky? I'm gonna move up on it and we'll look at it some more. See how it keeps going up and up and up into the sky? It is the Milky Way. Excellent answer, Taylor. You are on it. And you just keep going up and up and up. So, how many people have seen the, well, I think I asked this of Jonathan's class before. How many people have actually seen the Milky Way before? You can see it pretty clearly out where I am. And of course, what we're looking at right there, right here, so you see where the teapot asterism is kind of here. All right, basically right about in that particular portion in the sky, right at the tip of the arrow, that is the center of the Milky Way galaxy. The bulge is basically, the center of it is right there, and there's a massive black hole that is in there. Probably Jonathan will talk about that a little bit later. So there we go. Now, let's switch gears a little bit here. So I'm going to ask you another question here. I'm a little bit off my game because of the technical things that I had here. So I'm going to actually look at some patterns over in the West. And so the question I might ask you is, why would I want to look at stars, asterisms, whatever, over in the western sky before other directions? Think about that for a bit. Why would I want to look at stars and asterisms or whatever over in the western sky? So to be like a weatherman here, so the western sky would be in that direction. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera in that direction. And we're going to look at the west a little bit. Woo, a little vertigo there. So there's my house. And I want to find a particular constellation of interest. There it is. So let's see. Have any people come up with an answer here. So why would I want to look at stars, asterisms, or whatever in the western sky before other directions tonight? Venus is bright over there. No, sorry, Taylor, you blew it on that one. Right, look, Sarah got it right. Because they disappear on the horizon sooner, because everything is setting in the west, right? So the sun set in the west because of the rotation of the earth. Of course, the sun wasn't moving. And so the night sky in the west is going to go down, right? And we won't see them anymore. So I want to grab some constellations over here first, and then we can, move on to some others. So here's a set of constellations. I'm gonna draw one. You might call them the capstone constellations. So what is a capstone? So let me do some really horrible drawing here. So if you got yourself an arch, right? Oh, come on, buddy. Turn that fade tool off there. So if you got yourself an arch over a doorway, like a medieval arch or something, right? This is going to be horrifying as a drawing. I apologize. Kind of looks like an arch, right? And then you got bricks, all right? Bricks, sort of. All right, so this brick right here, what's that brick called? Anybody know? Anybody got an idea as to what that brick is called? That one right at the top? I'll give you a hint. It's related to the state of Pennsylvania. Any takers? Any takers? Any takers? Steelers fans? Eagles fans? Keystone, there you go. Taylor, you are on it. You are on it. Okay, so this is known as the keystone or the capstone of the arch, okay? Oops. And if you look in the sky at a particular location, there are actually two constellations that the center part looks like, oops, come on, dude. Looks like a keystone to the arch. So here's one in the west. Okay? Ooh, can you hear the coyote? The coyote is starting to bay out here. All right, and this constellation has some other parts to it as well. It's a little harder to draw. This is the constellation Hercules. He looks a little bit like a spider, okay? But the key is the body is pretty prominent, pronounced, and somewhat easy to see up in the night sky. The other capstone type thing you see is this one over here, the keystone. This is the head of Drago the dragon, and that constellation kind of wings around. It's fairly large, and it sort of, I'll try to show it, but I don't think I can fit it in the camera. It winds around the Little Dipper. But if you look off to the west, currently if I do the fist method and I look to the horizon, I put the base of one of my fists at the bottom of the horizon, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 40 degrees, 4 fists in front of your face, 40 degrees up due west is Hercules. And Hercules has some really cool objects in it. So I'm going to ask you your next question because I am an educator here. Move that stupid thing over there. All right, so my next question is, and this is going to be related. I don't know if you've covered this yet. Dr. D can tell. If not, a globular and open cluster. Okay, what's the difference between a globular and an open cluster? So there's a question to ponder there for you. It turns out in Hercules, there is a really awesome globular cluster right about there. See how it's, if you look at these two stars, it's about a third of the way over from this star towards this star. And it's a globular cluster, and I've got a picture of that over here. I do like to take pictures of things. Oh, we talked about it yesterday. How about that, Muhammad? So let them hang there for a while before you answer that, man. Okay, so we got to hide the screen brush, and then we're going to show the globular cluster. There's the globular cluster. That is literally the globular cluster. I know because I took that picture. That is literally the globular cluster that is sitting right there. It's called Messier 13. Messier was a dude who was really interested in searching for comets, and he put together this cool list of objects in the sky that looked like fuzzballs that were fuzzy, and people would mistake them for comets. And that's why he put that together, because he didn't want people to go, oh, I found a new comet. No, wait a minute, it's just some other object. So this was the 13th object he cataloged, called Messier 13. And it is a globular cluster, about 100,000 stars in it. It's something like 18,000 light years away. So it's been 18,000 years since the light reaching us today left that particular cluster. All right. Anybody give up? Globular cluster? So globular clusters are sort of separate entities. They are kind of primordial formations of stars that tend to circulate around the galaxy by themselves. They hold themselves together. They kind of, they're attracted to the galaxy, so they're in orbit around the galaxy, but they orbit in this region of the galaxy called the halo. Above and below it. They are old stars, and so I tend to think about globular clusters as like gated communities. They just kind of stick to themselves. They're kind of off in the periphery, and they are older stars that have been around since, very early in the universe. And some of them might have been galaxies that were tiny and got gobbled up by a main galaxy, by the Milky Way, but most of them just form by themselves, and they're pretty interesting. So an open cluster is a birthing place of young stars. So think about it as Lord of the Flies in the sky, right? A whole bunch of little baby stars. A lot of them can be pretty large because they're sucking up all the gas in a nebula. And eventually, an open cluster of the stars wander away from each other because there's not enough gravity to hold them together like a globular cluster. And so those stars wander out into the galaxy and become their own thing, hanging out by themselves, right? Likely we were part of an open cluster at one point. All right, so that's Hercules and Draco. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more on Draco. So there's Draco's head. He kind of, you can see the head kind of wanders around, and then let's see, kind of wanders around, and then there's the Little Dipper over there. Let's see if we can see the Little Dipper. The Little Dipper can actually be a little bit difficult to visualize. I got to look away from my screen to see if I can see it. Right. Yep, that's it. All right, so unfortunately with the light bleed we have with my camera right now, it is not easy to see the Little Dipper. And that's not surprising. The Little Dipper is a faint constellation. But let me show you the asterism here. So, really stupid question. Hopefully everybody knows. What direction is the Little Dipper in? Please answer that question correctly. What direction is the Little Dipper in? Come on, man. What direction is the Little Dipper in? North. Excellent. Thank you. Of course it is. So, and I'm sorry, I drew the tail wrong. It's supposed to be like this. Sorry about that. Let's do it again. So this is the asterism of the Little Dipper. So see, a lot of people think, oh yeah, Little Dipper, that's easy to see. Not really. Not really. And so it's dumping all of its stuff out here in the sky. It's like a scoop upside down. Right, so if we know this is north, what is this star? This star is really famous. Super, super famous. What is the name of that star? For those of you Georgians, it's also the name of an ATV company. There you go, Polaris. Excellent. Yes, and it is due north. So obviously the sky, it appears to rotate around in this direction. Okay. Oops, that was the wrong direction there. Okay, so we've gotten the Little Dipper, we've gotten Sagittarius, we've gotten Hercules and Draco. Now it's time to go back because now the west is not as interesting. So let's go back to the south and take a look at some stuff. So there's my house, blah, 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 blah. There's the Milky Way again. There's Sagittarius. Let's go due east because there's some really cool stuff going on due east. Whoa, whoa, what is that? I'm going to center on this here. Okay. So, what are we looking at here over to the left here? What are we looking at here? What is that? What is it? What is it? What are we looking at? Certainly looks bright. Certainly looks really bright. Super bright. In fact, if you were outside looking due east right now, it's freaking bright. What is it? What is that object? It is Jupiter. Taylor, you are on. You are on. So that's Jupiter right there. And you may have heard in the news that Jupiter was close to opposition over the past week or two. And it was as close to the Earth as it has been in X number of years. I don't, somebody said like 53 or something like that. Please don't quote me on that. So the thing I always think is funny whenever the news talks about how close Jupiter is, and oh my God, it's as close as it's been in, X number of years. You know what? It's still freaking bright if you go out now. Go outside. Look at it. It's still super bright. It's crazy bright. Crazy bright. Now, it turns out that there is actually another planet in the sky close to that. Okay, so educator time. Got to ask a question because that's what it's all about, right? Planets. So, question about planets. Planets in our sky all basically... I'll answer your question in a second, Taylor. Okay, there you go. There's your question. So if the ISS is to pass by, could I see it? Absolument. In fact, I might be able to find a picture of the ISS that I took. So let's see. If I go to my directory called Cool Pictures, and these are all pictures that I've taken over time. Various things that have happened, including a comet. Under objects, under satellites, I've probably got the ISS. So there, right there, is a picture of, I'm sure that is the moon. And that is a picture of the International Space Station. You can see it looks like hash marks. That's because my camera was taking 15-second shots and I had to keep pressing the shutter over and over again. But that's what it looks like when it goes over. And to the naked eye, it would look like a very bright dot. And usually you will see it, you won't see it in the middle of the night. You will see it at dawn or at dusk, because that's when the angle is just right that it reflects light off of the sun towards your eye. So there you go. How about that? Right. The ecliptic. Yes. So that's the answer to the name. What does it represent? What does the ecliptic represent? Oops. I'm having Wi-Fi issues tonight with my camera here. Okay, so yes, that's correct. It represents the path of the sun. So, and the reason why it would represent the path of the sun is because everything appears to be on a plane, right? Not all the planets orbit exactly in the same plane as all the other planets. In fact, Pluto as a dwarf planet is a blatant exception. But everything essentially orbits around in a disk around the sun. And so it appears as though all the planets lie essentially on that same line that the sun goes through the sky as well. All right, so let me show you something else here after my camera had some Wi-Fi issues. Look at what we got here. So we got Jupiter over here. Right, Jupiter. Whoa, what is that? What the heck is that? That is also a very, 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 very bright object in the sky. If you were out here looking at it, you would see it. I'm just going to get to the point. That's Saturn, folks. That is Saturn. And it's definitely not as bright as Jupiter, but at certain times of the year, it can be fairly bright. Jupiter is sort of a pale yellowish white, and Saturn is definitely more of a yellow, sort of an orange tinge to it when you look in the sky. But once again, keep in mind, planets are fairly easy to tell that they're to differentiate from stars, because the planets themselves are little dots in the sky, whereas stars are really pinpoints of light. And so any atmospheric distortion via clouds or water vapor will make it to not make the planets flicker. Of course, if it's really, really cloudy, the planets are going to flicker too, and there's not much you can do about it. Right. So a few more constellations that I particularly like. Let's go back to the Milky Way and trace it straight up. So there's Sagittarius setting. We're going to go straight up with the Milky Way, and I'm going to keep going. Going to be tricky. I'm going to have to rotate it because I can't get it all in the same camera angle. So, oh look, there's a satellite. Oh look, there's a satellite. It's a satellite. So, oh, look, there's a satellite or something. See that, folks? Let me take a look. That's always fun. You guys were asking about whether you can see satellites. You see that thing right there? Boot, doot, doot. That's obviously a satellite of some sort going through the night sky. How about that? All right. This is a cool constellation. It is called Cygnus. It's one of my favorites. And so, what's really cool about it, I think, is, and I think I was waxing poetically about this when I came and visited Dr. Dawson's class, but it really does look like a swan. Right? So it also looks like a cross, but sort of, that's what the asterism looks like. And so if you were to sort of draw a bird around it, it would look kind of like this. And then its wing kind of does this number here. Right. So it's currently flying due south. So it is, if I look up into the sky, this is sort of south. And this is kind of north. And as the Milky Way, of course, is not quite perpendicular to north to south. It's kind of perpendicular to the ecliptic plane, but it's not quite perpendicular to north and south. And so as the night sky rotates around, the Milky Way sort of has a slant to it, and basically Cygnus ends up looking like it's flying to the west. Okay, to the southwest, just like a real bird would in the wintertime. But you can see why it looks like a cross, right? Looks like a cross. You can see all the haziness from the Milky Way up here. There is actually a really cool thing located right here. See how it looks very, very hazy? Oh, there's another satellite. See it? About ready to go through that same area. Boop. That's pretty cool. So yes, Taylor, you can see lots of satellites, including the International Space Station. But see how there's a kind of a hazy region here? This star right here is known as Deneb. Okay? Deneb. And it's a super bright star. It's a ginormous star. It's going to have a really bad day one of these days and explode because it's super, super giant, super hot. Anyway, but I was talking about this thing here, this hazy region here. This hazy region here is, it's question time. Question time. What is a nebula? Yeah, let's just stop there. I don't know why my font got smaller. But ponder that question for a second. And I'm going to show you what's actually there. There's actually a big nebula there. And it looks like this. Okay? Kind of a cool. This is Deneb right here. This star over to the right, super bright. And this is known as the North American Nebula. Let me sort of show you. So Mexico is kind of here. And you got California sort of over here, and then Canada, right? And I guess this is the Yucatan. and then on up to Texas, and then you got the Gulf Coast, and then Florida, and then the East Coast, and then, you know, Nova Scotia or whatever the heck's going on up here. I don't know where Hudson Bay is. It's probably up here somewhere. But you can see it looks like the North American continent. That's why they call it the North American Nebula. Okay. And so it's right at the tail end of Cygnus. And once again, where is that thing? It is this region. This was basically the size of the picture. And so if I look up in the sky and I ask myself, how big is that? That is about... that's the better part of 8 to 10 degrees across. So these nebula are huge, and they we don't see them. They're like quiet ghosts passing over us in the night, because you have to be someplace really, really dark to see them. But it's there, and it's large, and it is a cloud of gas and dust, indeed. And these end up being the birthplaces of stars, because they are gravitationally collapsing in on themselves until stars fire up. And there you go. Yeah, it's Muhammad. I think I remember that at some point. There are a lot of stars that have a name with the Arabic Deneb attached to it. Isn't that correct, Muhammad? Like, this is the Deneb because it's the tail, but I think there are some other stars called something or other Deneb or whatever because it means like a tail or something like that. But yeah, no, it's cool. It is important for people to note, and I'm sure that Muhammad is stressing this, but many stars in our Western naming of constellations and all that have Arabic names, and this is because the Islamic world in the medieval times was kicking ass and taking names with regards to astronomy. There were many world-class astronomers in medieval times. In the Arabic world is the golden ages of sorts. And so we have all these names that have stuck around with us for so many years. And there are also some Babylonian names as well. Right. Okay. Did I pronounce Deneb correctly, Muhammad, or is it Deneb? I don't know. You tell me. There is another cool star that if we actually go stargazing out here, it's this one. So it's at the head, and this star is called Alberio. I didn't spell that right. I still didn't spell it right. Alberio. Alberio is one of the prettiest double stars in the sky. You might say that it sort of celebrates the Ukraine at this point, because one of them is a very blue star and one of them is yellow, and it's just striking to see them together. Very, very striking. Extremely striking looking. All right, so we got Cygnus. Let's see if we look around where Jupiter is, if we can see this giant constellation, which is one of my favorites. I'll tell you where we are in a second. I'm going to have to, I hope you don't get vertigo here from me swinging around. Okay, there we go. Now that does not contain all of the stars, unfortunately, in that constellation. But I'm going to draw at least 4 of these guys. Ooh, there's something out in my pasture that just made a rustle. Not sure what it is. Probably deer. I hope it's deer. You never know. All right. All right, so that's the main part of the asterism. There's actually a part that goes on up like this. And you can't see behind the trees, but there's actually something that goes a little bit like this. If you know what where the stars are behind the tree. And so that thing in the sky, which looks like a big square, that's about 20 degrees across. That's 20 degrees in the sky. It's huge. So put your fists out in front of yourself and look at two fists on top of each other. That's how wide the sky is. So my own terminology, of course, but I refer to this part of the asterism as the BAS, otherwise known as the big ass square, otherwise known as Pegasus. So Pegasus is one of those very recognizable asterisms in the sky. Yep, this time of year, it's kind of almost overhead, but basically pretty far east. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fists up. It's about 50 degrees up from the horizon. And in this particular location, we have the constellation of Andromeda. And so Andromeda is special because Andromeda is the closest major galaxy in our neighborhood. So how far away is the Andromeda galaxy? How far away is it? So the light leaving Andromeda is reaching us tonight from what time? I am going to show another picture here as you are thinking about this. So let's take a look at the Andromeda galaxy. Hopefully this is a good picture. We'll see. There it is. There's the Andromeda galaxy, closest neighboring galaxy to us. It is unfortunately coming towards us, and we will ram into it eventually, and that will be that. We will form the same galaxy. It is about right here. And if it were actually that's not quite right. It's more like right down here in the base of the tree. If it were visible outside the tree, you could actually see a smudge there. So how far away is the Andromeda galaxy? Any takers? Any takers, folks? No? Yes? It's about 2.5 million light years away. So the light left the Andromeda galaxy, headed towards us way before our ancestors were standing on their feet. So long ways away. But yet that is the closest major galaxy to us. There are some closer minor galaxies, including the Magellanic Clouds in the south, which we can't see from here, of course. Those are more like hundreds of thousands of light years away. But the Andromeda galaxy is right over there. Okay. So that's kind of it. I can show you one more constellation that's sort of hanging out here. Oh, my camera. What is my camera? It's got some Wi-Fi issues here. All right, so we're going to go back to the Milky Way one more time. And we're going to go up here. Let's see, I got to think about where this constellation is. It's down here. Okay, there it is. So this star, oops. This star right here is Altair. And there's a massive asterism in the sky called the Summer Triangle, which consists of Altair, Deneb, and another star called Vega. But anyway, this is Aquila the Eagle. Aquila looks something like this. Is the asterism. Oh, I did it again. Looks something like this, I think. Let's see. I'm going to blow this. It's something like this, I think. I know I got that wrong, but it's kind of like a jet airplane, something like that. Anyway, the Eagle is also flying down the Milky Way, heading towards the south. Claire, good job with the how far away Andromeda Galaxy was. And so there it is. So let's see. In review, we have seen Cygnus. We've seen Aquila the Eagle. We've seen Pegasus. We've seen Hercules. We've seen the Little Dipper. We've seen a couple satellites. And we've seen Sagittarius and Jupiter and Saturn. Holy cow, that's a bunch of stuff. All right, so there are a couple more things that you need to be aware of before I call it a night. And what I mean is like maybe 3-ish. The Orionids. So the Orionids are a meteor shower. They are caused by little bits and pieces from Halley's comets over the years that are still in orbit, and we cross that orbit every year during the same day, October 21st, 22nd. So this year, Friday morning, at about 3-ish, if you get up, Orion should be over to the east, sort of hanging in the sky. And this kind of region right here in his shoulder, if I'm Orion and you look at Orion as like an hourglass, this region right here, you should have meteors streaming from it. Okay, I don't know if you like my meteor action. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that. And then there's something else. November 8th, right? Election Day. What's happening on November 8th? Does anybody know? Total lunar eclipse. And that's in the morning too. It's actually maximum around 5:30 a.m. So if you get, I don't remember when it begins, but it's going to begin something like, it's going to begin to really be visible somewhere around 3 a.m. And then at sunrise, as the moon is going down, the moon should actually be total. So it should be fairly dramatic. Yeah, I don't like to think about the omens and lunar eclipses in election day. Trust me. Yeah, let's try not to think about that. But anyway, it's there. You might as well catch it. Vote early, and then you can not have to worry about going to the polls, and you can see your total lunar eclipse. I'm going to be standing out in a freaking cold field trying to take some pictures of it. Before I leave you, I guess I could show you sort of some things that you might see. This is kind of what you're going to see at sunset. It's going to be this dark orange, and then, at sunrise. And it's going to set like that. It's going to be pretty dramatic. In fact, a few years ago, I took a picture of a setting lunar eclipse. What was it? This one? Nope. This one? Nope. I don't have that picture. I don't think. Maybe I do. What is this? Yeah, so go out and see the total lunar eclipse on November 8th. And that's it. So I'm going to sign off here. And thanks for showing up. I got to go inside and get some coffee.